Hey everybody. So I wanted to just record this video in the event that some of you wanted to work on other things, like maybe the project or whatever, ed puzzles or whatnot. So instead of me doing direct instruction today, I'm gonna record this quick video going over the misinformation lesson on iCivics. Like I talked about last week, this is something that's incredibly important, especially in today's day and age. With all the misinformation, fake news, all that stuff going on right now. It's incredibly important that you all as young adults, be able to spot misinformation, know the warning signs, and all that. So I'm going to quickly just kind of go over the gist of this with everybody. So it starts off here talking about, it gives you like an example, right? So there's a large explosion that goes on right on Facebook. Your Aunt Lucy feels shocked because she sees an article that claims that the people who carried out this bombing had been arrested for attempted bombings in the past, but they'd been let go on like technicalities, right? So this is a good example of trying to check your sources, make sure what you're consuming is actually factually correct. Um, so the first thing we're going to look at here is what exactly is misinformation. So one key thing to take note of here is that misinformation can range from like actual lies where someone's intentionally trying to mislead you to actually simple mistakes that get fixed later on. Um, Sometimes, and I think I mentioned this in one of the classes last week. There's sometimes going to be mistakes if you're watching the news, and people being interviewed, right, might lie or skew the facts. But most reliable news outlets are going to try to they have a reputation to uphold, right? They want to be seen as a legitimate, good news source, so they're going to try to fix that. Um, if they accidentally spread misinformation. So there's a difference between like accidentally spreading misinformation and you know actively knowingly spreading dis or misinformation. All right. Um, you know the big source of most misinformation nowadays is not on news shows, right, and on TV. It's the internet, man, and that's just the sheer fact of the matter. So we're gonna start looking at some like markers of unreliability. So like, what are some things that we need to look out for? All right. So once again, this is continuing with the theme of the bombing that they talked about earlier. Um, so anytime you see headlines like this, law enforcement fail, a real complete news exclusive. First of all, that should raise a red flag because this is very much an attention getting title. That's not to say that this is obviously going to be fake news, but anything that's trying to grab your attention like this is trying to do it because they know that it's more likely to get you to click it and get more clicks and open it up, right? So if you read this right here, which I'm not going to do with you, you can read this on your own or with a partner or whatever. You can see that the author here is making a very questionable attempt to sound legitimate without giving you any actual information, right? So they're telling you that they have credible information, but they're not telling, or credible info, sorry, but they're not telling you where they got it from. That's, warning sign number one, right? So who are these law enforcement sources that they are claiming that they have? What agency are they with? Is it a local police agency? Is it the FBI? Is it their state bureau of investigation? Right? Why are they not posting it here? Why are they not sharing who their source is? And then there's the actual news reports, right? So they claim to have news reports that they're basing this off of. What publication? What source are they getting this from? They're not saying, right? Um, as for the quote unquote source that they have in the city of Miami, there's no more information about that person at all. All right. Which tells you that more likely than not, the author probably just fabricated this, completely made it up. All right. Legitimate, reliable news outlets will always try to answer the question, how do we know, throughout their reports? How can we make sure that we're portraying to the public that this is legitimate, that we are not feeding you a load of crap, right? Some unreliable news sites will post their own version of stories from more reputable sites, but without the transparency or without the accuracy. So they'll link to the original source, um, but how many people are actually going to click on that link and go and check the original source of the information? So what I mean by this is that some sites that are very highly opinionated and biased will use a story or something from another site and then put their own skew towards it. All right, which is problematic. All right, so moving down here. All right, so fake news. Whenever you hear the term fake news, it's exactly what it sounds like, right? It looks like the real thing, but it isn't the real thing, right? It's made up. It's something that someone has packaged to look like legitimate news. That's the whole purpose, to trick you into thinking it, right? But fake news isn't just misleading, it is full on fiction. It is completely fabricated to try to get a reaction out of you. Most of the time, that reaction is anger. They're trying to make you angry about something. All right. Um, Take the time, and I'm not going to go over it extensively, but take some time to look at some common tricks among some real life examples of fake news. So these are just some warning signs, right? So photos or videos that have been digitally altered, that happens a lot nowadays. Fake social media posts, so like taking a tweet or something that a public official has made and then completely fabricating the text that's actually in it, right? So let's say they use the example here about Ted Cruz. Someone faking a tweet from him saying that he's threatening to deport Beyonce, right? So like odds are, and it actually didn't happen, right? Odds are he probably didn't say this, and he didn't, right? Someone just doctored it to look like that. Next one is junk science. Boy, this could not be more relevant right now, right? Just claiming to have scientific proof of something, right, without actually having any proof, whatnot. So just take a look at these other ones here. Um, fictional organizations. So I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but real quick, this is still very big today. In the aftermath of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting in 2018, there were some on the internet who were claiming that this didn't actually happen, that there were quote unquote crisis actors at these schools acting like this mass shooting took place, but when it really didn't. So a lot of crazy stuff out there. Um, so looking down here, some stories, are called, we refer to these as hoaxes, right? So hoaxes are designed to fool people for certain reasons. Um, you can look here and see why, right? So a lot of these disreputable sites, a lot of these sites that are not legitimate, they benefit from the fact that lots of people don't know how to distinguish real news from bogus fake stories, right? They're relying on the fact that people don't know how to distinguish real news from fake news, and it's very important that we know how to do that. So going down here, we're going to skip over this a little bit. A false claim is something that someone stated or said that isn't true, or sorry, that is true when it isn't, and politicians make them pretty regularly. Right? So it's a statement that someone said that they're saying that something is true, but it isn't, right? So politicians make these oftentimes. Okay, it may not be on purpose, right? Maybe they misquoted something, made a mistake, right? Politicians are very busy people; they can't always 100% fact check something on the spot, right? So it might not be on purpose. It might be, it depends. Um, so some politicians, they're in the business of gathering support for their ideas, right? Sometimes this means that they'll make statements that are like partially true or half true or something like that, but they're not giving you the whole picture, okay? Um, so moving on down here to hyperbole. Hyperbole, this is the exact same definition that you're used to from English class. So take note of that. Sometimes headlines are just a little misleading in order to make the story sound more interesting, right? So kind of think about like clickbait titles. Um, if a headline, though, is misleading, it doesn't matter what the article says because there are so many people out there that just read news headlines, right? And that's not, that doesn't make you like, a bad person, but you need to make sure that you're following through and actually, skim not just the headlines, but skim the article. Take a second to read it. Make sure that whatever they're saying is actually correct. All right. So skipping down here to healthy skepticism. Healthy skepticism is super important in this day and age, and this is incredibly vital in order for you all to become actively civic participants in society. All right. So this means that you're willing to question information, even if you really want something to be true, but you're not being so cynical or skeptical that you just have a distrust for everything. All right. So developing healthy skepticism, this is basically you just double checking, right? So I want this thing to be true, but I need to make sure that before I go and post this online, it actually is true. Because if not, I'm going to look like a fool, right? You don't want to do that. So your first line of defense against misinformation is just simple common sense, right? And that can't be overstated. All right. Um, so this is going to lead into the next part right here, which is incredibly important. And I'm actually going to I'm going to insert some text boxes here for some sites that I want you all to take note of. So some fact checking sites. So the main skill that will keep you from getting fooled by misinformation is fact checking, right? And that is to literally go and double check that something is factually correct. All right. So a couple of good websites that you can use, bookmark these or whatever. PolitiFact, they are really good. Um, Snopes, factcheck.org. Right, these are just some good ones that they do a really good job of keeping up to date with big claims by public officials, and then doing the digging for you. Is what Joe Biden said 100% true about this one issue, and then they'll take a deep dive into it and really check the sources and everything, which is a great thing to do. We're going to kind of skip over triangulation and internet sleuthing down here. Internet sleuthing, this is just you doing your own research and trying to come to your own conclusions, which is not a bad thing. But once again, you need to look out for warning signs. Don't just be looking for confirmation bias, just looking for things that back up whatever claim you're trying to make just because you want to be right. Reputation. Okay, so once again, I'm going to insert a text box here with some pretty important news outlets that their job is to solely report on the facts, and that one of them is the Associated Press, AP, Reuters, CBS, ProPublica, PBS. Right, these are news outlets that their sole job is to report on the facts. So they do a good job of basically never bringing in any sort of bias into their reporting. Um, and I'm not saying to just blindly support everything that they're claiming, right? So it even says this, right? Uh, where is it? Right. I'm not saying that you should just blindly trust everything that they report, but it means that you're probably safe in accepting the information that you're hearing from them now, right? And if something sounds a little sketchy, then do your own research, right? All right, so now we're down here into like one of the actual parts of the assignment that you're going to do after you've read through these. All right, so we've got 7 types of mis and disinformation here. All right, so one is satire or parody. So this is literally just there's no intention to cause harm, but it has the potential to fool people, right? So being able to pick up on sarcasm, that's a big one. Anytime you see anything from theonion.com, it is satire. Um, hardtimes.net, I think it is. They also are really good about satire and parody. Sometimes the New Yorker also does satire and parody. All right, next one, misleading content. So actively misleading, publishing misleading information to try to frame an issue or an individual in a certain light. Imposter content. So when genuine sources are impersonated. Um, fabricated content. So new content is 100% false, but it's designed to deceive and to do harm. False connection. So when headlines, visuals, captions don't support the content. False context, when genuine content shared with false contextual information, and manipulated content. So when genuine information or imagery is manipulated or deceived. So like that Ted Cruz thing I was mentioning earlier, that was an example of manipulated content. All right. So for each real life example that you see right here below, use the chart to identify the types of misinformation involved. All right. Some are going to have more than one use, right? So sometimes you might have more than one of these in play. Others may only have one. All right. So it just depends. All right. So if we look at number one here, a website published a false story claiming that police had killed a 3-year-old during a shootout with armed felons. The photo with the story was traced to an actual shooting in a different city where police had shot and killed a man 2 years earlier. The website calls itself a quote unquote prank site where users can fool their friends with fake stories. So, what I want y'all to do by yourself, with a friend, whatever, and if you have questions at some point, come up and ask me, um, is to look at this, highlight the parts that, all right, so you're going to list the types of, you know, examples that you see here. So for the first one, I'll just go ahead and do the first one with you. Fabricated content and false context are the examples that are used here. So fabricated content, I'm going to highlight this green. Okay, just kidding. I can't highlight it green. All right, so for this, in all intents and purposes here, I am going to highlight the piece of the text here that is fabricated content in green so that we can, link it with that. So in fact, I'm going to go ahead and put green over here so we know. All right. So whenever they said that this website published a false story, right, that's fabricated content. All right. That is, new content that's 100% false, designed to deceive and to do harm. Right. So right there, that is fabricated content to a T. All right. And also another piece of this example that shows it's fabricated content is, this prank site where users can fool their friends. It's to actively deceive them. All right, are they doing it with harmful intent? No, probably not. However, it can be used for that as well. All right, for false context, we're gonna just make this pink. All right, so now I'm gonna use my pink highlighter tool. All right, so the part of this that is false context, the photo with the story was traced to an actual shooting in a different city. All right, so this is false context, right? This is where something genuine happened, but it's shared with a false contextual information. They're using something that actually happened, but they're applying it to a different story. All right, so that's false context. And you do not have to write your search string right here for any of these, for any of the, what is it? 6 examples. You don't have to write your search string for any of these. Not asking that you do that. Just identify the types of mis and disinformation that you see, and then link it to whatever piece of the example, or sorry, the piece of the text from the example that you see. Okay, so that's all that I'm asking you to do. So work together, work by yourself. Like I said, I am absolutely 100% free to help you answer any questions and whatnot. Do more of a deep dive and a thorough read on this than I did. I just wanted to hit the highlights of the big things that I really wanted you to take away from this. So after you do that, go down here, make sure that you do this information investigation piece with the 6 examples and follow the directions that I just laid out, and then you'll be good to go. I'm not going to ask that you do this web activity. Don't worry about it. Just do the piece that I told you about, that information investigation right here. Okay. So I hope this was helpful and everything. And like I said, if you got questions or whatnot, I'm here to help. I'll be walking around making sure everyone's good to go, not confused. All right. Thanks, everybody.